Hey guys, tonight, we travel to a time when Constantinople still breathed incense and glowed with 1,000 trembling lights. A time when the clink of hammer against clay was as constant as church bells, and a man could make a living coaxing fire and earth into vessels of light. You're not an emperor, not a saint, but your name will one day live inside a soot-marked lamp buried in a forgotten cellar. And here's the thing, they don't warn you how hot it gets in a pottery shed, or how quickly clay dries under your nails and cracks your baby soft skin. You'll grow up beside a hearth, yes, but not the cozy kind. The kind that eats your eyebrows if you lean in too far. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you listening from tonight and what time is it there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember your birth, of course, but others do. Your mother in particular would never let you forget. You were born screaming louder than the kiln, she liked to say. Her laugh would bounce off the clay jars stacked in the corner, just loud enough to drown out your father cursing at a cracked mold. You were born near the Theodosian walls in a neighborhood of artisans and fire-bruised stone where oil smoke hung thick in the rafters and soot painted every doorway. The house was more kiln than home. Every wall leaned slightly from years of trapped heat. A long, narrow room served as both bedroom and drying shed. Oil lamps lined the shelf over your cradle, hundreds of them. Some shaped like fish, others like peacocks. Most bore crude crosses pressed in while the clay was still tender. A few were finer, etched with saints' faces so small you'd squint to see them. You were not the first child in that house, but you were the first to live. Your older siblings, if they ever existed beyond whispered sighs, had vanished before memory. Plague, smoke, hunger, the usual suspects. Your earliest memory is warm, not a metaphor, literally warm. You're crouched beside your father, watching him shape a lump of clay into a hollow, open-mouthed lamp. His hands are enormous, trembling with age and precision. He whispers to the clay like it's a skittish horse. Too dry and she cracks. Too wet and she collapses. You nod solemnly, 4 years old, and ready to inherit the secrets of fire. You spend your toddlerhood fetching things, jugs of water from the cistern, splinters of wood for the kiln, bits of sponge from the harbor for glazing. You can't read, but you know every symbol stamped into your father's molds, the chi rho, the alpha and omega, the oddly smiling fish. These keep us safe, your mother murmurs every time she presses a mark into a lamp. You don't question how. By the time you're 6, you've already scorched your thumb, broken 3 mold handles, and nearly shattered the oil press. But you also craft your first full lamp. It's ugly, lopsided, with an opening too wide and a base that wobbles like a stunned jellyfish. But your father lights it anyway. You remember watching the first flicker rise from the wick, dancing awkwardly in the drafty shed, casting shadows that look like saints in motion. You feel like you've created a star. Outside, Constantinople bustles. Horse hooves clatter on stone, monks chant in alleys, street vendors hawk fried chickpeas and boiled snails. But you are often too tired to notice. By 8, you've memorized the smell of linseed oil and clay dust. You know that if the smoke from the kiln turns blue, someone's made a mistake. And you've learned that sometimes the lamp cracks anyway without reason, like a silent rebellion from the fire. Your friends, if you could call them that, are mostly other apprentices. A glassblower's boy who always smells like vinegar. a weaver's daughter who sneaks you figs, a runaway monk who claims he once saw the emperor bathe. You rarely play. There's too much to do. Besides, your father says the lamps don't wait. The saints need their light. Not that you always agree. At age 9, you steal a lamp. Just a small one shaped like a lion with a spout curled like a roaring mouth. You hide it under your tunic and run down to the harbor, lighting it under the moonlight, just to watch the water shimmer. It's your rebellion, your secret shrine. Of course you're caught. Your father doesn't shout. He simply takes the lamp, studies it, and says, "At least you chose a good one." Then he grounds you for a month by assigning you only one task, spinning the potter's wheel. Every single day. Your arms grow stronger. Your back too. The city itself shapes you. Constantinople in your childhood is a layered place. Gold mosaics blink in every chapel. Cats rule the streets. The hippodrome echoes with distant cheers and riots. You're vaguely aware of emperors and bishops, but to you, power lies in the hands that shape things. The real masters of the world aren't kings, they're craftsmen with calluses and ruined fingernails. Historians still argue whether workshops like yours were organized as formal schools or loose family guilds. All you know is this: the lamp-making knowledge feels ancient, not taught but transferred. You absorb it like clay absorbs heat slowly, then all at once. By age 10, you've learned how to mend cracked molds with wet bread. You can tell a finished lamp's quality just by the sound it makes when tapped. You've memorized 50 oil recipes, including one involving boiled rose hips that your mother swears keeps away demons. Modern scholars would be skeptical, but honestly, it smells fantastic. Some nights you fall asleep with soot in your nostrils and the smell of pine oil in your hair. The last thing you see before sleep is always the same: a tiny flame burning steady inside something you helped shape. Your world is fire oil shadow, and you're just getting started. You're 11 when the cane first kisses your shoulders, not from your father, but from your new master. Apprenticeship has a formality now, a guild contact, a blessing from the local bishop, and unfortunately, a master who believes bruises teach better than words. He smells like vinegar and wet rope. His voice is like sandpaper on wood, always rasping, always slightly mocking. If the clay resists, he tells you on the first day, break it. It's better than letting it break you. And he demonstrates snapping a half-formed lamp in two before you can even blink. You feel your stomach twist. You had just shaped that. This man's workshop is more sophisticated than your father's. It sits near the Forum of Constantine, tucked between a tile merchant and a taverna whose patrons never seem to leave. There are 12 apprentices each with their own cot and basin. The rules are clear: no speaking during the morning, wheel turn, no unlit wicks inside, and no asking questions after the 3rd hour of the night. Your tasks shift rapidly. At first you carry water, then you sift ash, then you learn to slice wicks so thin they disappear between your fingers. One week you're stirring crushed hematite into slip for red-glazed lamps. The next you're elbow deep in goat fat trying to extract oil that won't smoke too much under icon lamps. The cane finds you often. Not out of cruelty, though it certainly doesn't help, but out of impatience. Byzantine craftsmanship, especially in the capital, is a high-pressure game. A single spoiled batch means hours of lost labor. One malformed lamp can sour a patron. One warped mold, and you start from zero. Your master is known for his perfectionism. He claims his lamps light the private chambers of the patriarch himself. You never see them there, of course. But once you catch sight of a lamp in the narthex of the Church of St. Irene, its spout shaped like a lion's maw, with your master's unmistakable stamp near the base. You recognize the mold. You cleaned it last week. Still, it's not all pain and silence. There are moments of quiet magic. One evening, as you work the foot pedal of the potter's wheel, your hand moves without thought. Clay centers itself beneath your palm. A lamp forms in perfect symmetry. No collapse, no cracks. Just a shallow bowl, a graceful spout, and a handle that arches like a swan's neck. No one praises you. No one needs to. The lamp doesn't wobble. You go to bed that night with dried clay under your nails and an unfamiliar warmth in your chest. Your fellow apprentices are a strange lot. One snores like a dying goat. Another weeps every time he ruins a mold. You share hard bread, stolen olives, and long whispers about what the imperial palace might be like. One boy, Nico, swears he saw Empress Theodora once glowing like an icon, he says, except alive. Historians still argue whether apprentices like you were formerly housed or lived with masters. Your inner voice tells you one night as you stare up at the ceiling beams. Well, you whisper back, I sleep next to 3 mold racks and a boy who thinks fleas are a sign of divine punishment. You'd kill for a pillow. And yet you learn. You learn more in those years than most learn in a lifetime. How to spot good clay by smell alone. How to adjust kiln temperature using only a thin reed and a wax drip. How to carve saints' faces so gently they seem to breathe. How to make oil from walnuts, flax, even lamprey fat. If you're desperate, and you will be. By 13, you're trusted with the finishing touch, the stamp. Every lamp gets one. A maker's mark, an icon, a sigil. Your master's is a double circle with a tiny palm tree. You hate it. So one day, just one, you sneak your own symbol onto a lamp, a crescent moon, crude but deliberate. No one notices, but the lamp ends up in the church of Saints Sergius and Bacchus, hanging over a font where the bishop himself baptizes infants. You see it 3 weeks later and nearly pass out. You've been immortalized accidentally. The real surprise. The lamp doesn't just work, it burns perfectly. You don't get punished. Maybe no one ever saw it. Or maybe your master is testing you. Either way, you never do it again. But deep down, a flicker lights up inside you. A tiny rebellion. A seed of self. By 15, your hands are a map of old burns and clay cuts. Your knees crack when you squat. You haven't seen your parents in 2 years. When you finally do, your mother weeps, and your father merely nods. You give him a lamp. Not a fancy one. Just a basic olive oil burner. But it's yours. He lights it that night and leaves it at the threshold, a beacon for passing cats and late visitors. You pretend not to see him wipe his eyes. One fringe tidbit the older apprentices share involves a legendary lamp, a relic shaped like the Virgin's face whose wick never runs out. The monks buried it under Blackerni, they whisper, to keep the fires of Constantinople burning during the end times. No one knows if it's real. But when you're alone at night, you sometimes imagine finding it. Digging into damp stone and discovering a flame that never dies. Some part of you wants to make that lamp yourself. A lamp that burns through war and plague and time. A lamp that says, I was here. By 16, your fingers know more than your mouth ever will. They shape lamps even when your mind drifts elsewhere, about your parents' aging hands, about whether the fishmonger's daughter actually smiled at you yesterday, or whether it was just the sun hitting her veil. You've graduated from basic forms. Now you're working on what your master calls the devout set lamps, designed for chapel niches, reliquaries, and upper-class homes, hoping to earn God's favor with soft, sacred light. These aren't just objects. They're theology in terracotta. You carve the Virgin with eyes cast down. You etch the cross with just enough curve to suggest humility, not pride. You learn how to form the oil chamber so precisely that the flame burns longer than expected, almost like grace. Every mistake, though, is met with silence. Not punishment, not praise. Just a long pause from your master. And somehow that pause stings more than the cane ever did. Eventually, he lets you work unsupervised. That's when things get interesting. You start experimenting softly at first. You add a second spout to one lamp, curious how twin flames will behave. You try new wicks braided from silk threads left by a neighboring weaver. You mix soot with white slip to create a marbled, smoky effect. Some days the results are beautiful. Other days the clay rebels and splits mid-kiln like a heretic under pressure. But you're learning to read the fire. The kiln has its own moods. Rainy days create damp air pockets that collapse vessels. Summer heat overdries the edges before the base is ready. You start sleeping in the workshop during large firings, not out of obligation, but because you want to witness the moment the heat curls the clay into permanence. Historians still argue whether ancient kilns in Byzantium had separate chambers for high-gloss finishings, or if glaze variations were purely accident. You'd laugh. You know exactly how intentional a good lamp can be, and how random even the best plan becomes once fire joins the conversation. One afternoon, a messenger arrives, sweaty, flustered, and clearly unused to the smell of baked earth. He holds out a rolled parchment bearing the seal of a mid-tier bishop. It's a commission. 10,000 lamps for a newly founded monastery near the Bosphorus. Your master reads it 3 times, then folds it carefully and hands it to you. You'll lead this batch, he says. You blink. You're 16, but your knees don't buckle and your voice doesn't crack. You simply bow and ask for more olive ash and fresh molds. The process takes weeks. You wake before the sunrise, sketch ideas in soot on walls, test wick angles, supervise younger apprentices who try your patience at every turn. You burn your forearm badly during the 3rd firing and keep working anyway, binding the blistered skin with flax and vinegar like your mother taught you. Each lamp in the set is slightly different. You don't have the heart to make them identical. One features a spiral. Another has a dotted border of pressed lentils. A few are plain, just honest clay with a glossy burnish. But everyone holds your breath, your sweat, your stubborn refusal to let the flame die. When they're done, your master inspects them. He says nothing. He loads the carts himself. You ride with them to the monastery. The journey is bumpy, the oxen slow. You sit beside the lamp's arms folded, guarding them like sacred relics. The monks who greet you are quiet, weathered, and seemingly unimpressed. But one of them, an older brother with an oddly gentle voice, picks up a lamp, holds it to the light, and murmurs, "This will outlast me." You feel something in your chest loosen, and then comes the moment that changes everything. A delegation from Hagia Sophia arrives. Yes, that Hagia Sophia. They need repairs and replacements for several icon lamps, some cracked by tremors, others darkened by decades of ash buildup. Your master selects a few of your pieces to include in the offering. You're told not to get your hopes up, but then days later, a letter arrives. Your lamp, a modest one shaped like a dove, has been installed beneath the main dome near the great mosaic of Christ Pantocrator. You're not allowed to visit it. Too many guards, too much protocol. But one of the porters smuggles out a sketch on a scrap of parchment, a glowing spot high above the altar, with your humble flame at its heart. You show the drawing to your father. He doesn't say a word. He just lights his old lamp, the one you made him, and places the sketch beside it. That night your dreams are full of flying doves and golden light. There's a fringe rumor circulating among apprentices now that certain lamps placed near relics, especially skull fragments of saints, burn brighter and longer, as though drawing power from the sacred remains. They whisper, one boy says, wide-eyed, that the fire drinks holiness. You're not sure you believe it, but a few weeks later you light one of your own lamps at home, just olive oil, a basic wick, no tricks, and it burns for 12 hours straight. Your mother insists it's a miracle. You say nothing, but you keep the lamp, quietly, for yourself, because you're beginning to realize something. This work, it isn't just about lighting rooms. It's about leaving behind light where there was none. And in that moment you understand you're no longer an apprentice. You're a lamp maker. The first time you walk into the Hagia Sophia, you almost forget to breathe. It's not during a ceremony, not during a holy day or grand procession. No, your invitation is quietly delivered by a clerk with parchment hands and eyes too tired to meet yours. They want you to see where it hangs, he mumbles, as if even that acknowledgement might burst under the weight of the domes. You pass through towering bronze doors into a sea of shadow and light. The scent hits first old incense, damp marble wax smoke, and something else, time perhaps. Time smells like dust in holy places. Above you, mosaics shimmer in golden tesserae. Christ's eyes, massive, unmoving gaze from high above, and you feel smaller than you've ever felt. There's no sermon, just silence and arches tall enough to cradle clouds. And there it is, your lamp, hanging just beneath a vault rib close to an icon of the Archangel Michael. It's small, barely visible unless you know where to look. But the flame dances calmly, a liquid flicker against polished stone. The clerk clears his throat and gestures for you to move along. But you don't. Not right away. You've never been so still in your life. You don't tell your master. He doesn't ask. But you know he knows. You've seen the way his eyes pause on your hands now, just for a second longer than before. It doesn't change everything, but it changes you. You start working differently. Slower, but not out of hesitation. You're deliberate. You test new spout angles, new oil blends, even filter the clay with goat's hair for texture. You stop mimicking his forms and start trusting your own. One day, you create a lamp shaped like an open palm. No one asked for it. No one commissions it. But when you light it, the flame curves against the fingers, and for a moment it looks like the hand of God holding light itself. You don't sell it. You keep it on your personal shelf next to a faded icon and a walnut from your mother's kitchen. You think about naming it, but never do. At this point, the guild notices you. They always do when someone stops merely copying and starts creating. You receive a formal invitation, a parchment sealed in wax bearing the sigil of the Lampright's Brotherhood. Come alone, it says, and wear something modest. You're not surprised. You've known this was coming. But still, your hands shake when you fold the message. The meeting takes place in a cellar beneath the Forum of Theodosius. 13 men sit in a circle, each holding a lamp of different style clay bronze. Even one glass, though that draws some side eyes. A brazier smolders in the center. No introductions, just nods. They ask you to recite the vow of flame. You do voice dry but steady. They ask what makes a lamp eternal. You say one that's remembered even when unlit. One man chuckles, another scowls, but no one disagrees. Then they brand your name into a lead tablet, hammer it to a wall, and say nothing more. You're a member now. That night, you drink more wine than usual, even though it burns your throat. You walk the seawalls alone, staring at the moonlight rippling over the water like oil. You don't feel proud. You feel weight, the kind that wraps around your shoulders like a heavy wool cloak. Because now your failures have consequences. The guild has rules. First, no selling outside the city without permission. Second, no passing secrets to glassblowers or foreign artisans. Third, no innovation without documentation. Yes, you heard that right. Innovation is welcome, but it must be recorded, reviewed, and archived in the vaults beneath the Hippodrome, where the Brotherhood maintains what they call the Lumen Codex. Historians still argue whether such a codex ever existed. Some claim it was destroyed in the Latin sack. Others say parts survive scattered in dusty Vatican cellars. You've seen it, though. Once. Just once. Opened by gloved fingers, it contained diagrams of lost molds, pigment recipes, and lamplighter prayers scratched in 4 languages. One fringe belief whispered in the guild is that the codex also contains lamp curse formulas, designs meant to snuff rival flames, sabotage a competitor's oil blend, or cause a lamp to shatter after only a few uses. You're never shown those pages. You're not sure they exist. You hope they don't. Still, your first year as a guild lamplight is intense. Orders come from everywhere. Merchants, bishops, shrine keepers, even courtesans with private icons. You carve tiny miracles, a lamp shaped like a pomegranate that drips oil slowly through tiny holes, a series of lion-footed burners meant to line the tomb of a retired general. One widow even pays you to craft a lamp in the likeness of her late husband's nose. You manage it. Barely. You start teaching 2, 1 apprentice at first, then 3. You make them clean their fingernails with vinegar and sleep beside the mold racks. You don't use the cane. You use silence instead. It's far more terrifying. The lamp you made for Hagia Sophia still burns. You check on it once a year. It's always lit. One year you notice a coin wedged under its stand. A small bronze phallus stamped with a cross. A monk tells you it's been there for months. I think someone made an offering, he says. You nod but don't take it, because even now, with the guild sigil sewn into your robe and your hands weathered by decades of clay, you still remember that first crooked lamp you made as a boy, the one your father lit on the threshold, and deep down you're still just trying to match its glow. You're 23 when Constantinople tries to tear itself apart. It begins like a cough in the back of the throat, easy to ignore, then suddenly unstoppable. Rumors, insults, then torches. The Nika riots. People screaming the word Nika, meaning victory, as if it's a holy chant and not a call for blood. At first, you stay in your workshop, convincing yourself it's just noise, just another political grumble echoing through the Hippodrome. But then someone sets fire to the baths of Zeuxippus. The smoke rolls toward the sky like a black veil, and your apprentices start praying in whispers. You watch from the door as mobs pour down the Maze, armed with anything that burns or breaks. By the time they reach your district, you've already packed the essentials, 3 prized molds, a skin of oil your apprentice's hand in yours. You shove your mother's icon into a clay bin lined with lamp wicks and hope for the best. Your father refuses to leave. He says, I've lived through 2 emperors and 7 earthquakes. If fire wants me, let it ask nicely. You press your last lamp into his hand and say nothing. He stands in the doorway like a saint sculpted from smoke. You flee with your apprentices through alleys slick with ash. The stench is thick, burnt cedar, scorched hair, and something worse. Human panic. People trample each other. You see a woman in silk robes light her own shop on fire to keep it from looters. Your destination is unclear. You head toward the harbor, or the church, or somewhere that isn't here. You duck behind a fig cart as soldiers clash with rioters. One man swings a broken lamp like a mace. Another has wrapped his head in linen soaked in oil and sets himself ablaze like a mad prophet. You drag your apprentice by the collar, heart pounding like the Black Sea in storm. You finally find shelter barely inside a bathhouse that's already been looted. The marble's cracked. The pools are dry. But the furnace still smolders. You wedge the door with a pile of bricks and wait. Hours pass, then days. You run out of bread. Your apprentices stop asking questions. The city howls outside. When silence finally comes, it's worse than the chaos. You emerge to find the forum blackened. The great church burned, the palace doors torn from their hinges. The skyline is different, empty where domes used to rise, as if the gods themselves have been scraped from their pedestals. Your workshop is half standing. The kiln's chimney leans like a drunk. The mold racks are gone. Someone stole even your mixing table. But miraculously, your father is alive, covered in soot, eyes red, but alive. He holds out the lamp you gave him, still whole. You rebuild. You don't cry, you don't shout. You kneel beside your broken kiln and begin to mix clay. That's what lamp makers do. Even when the city burns, the lamps must be made. The Nika riots, historians agree, were political. At their heart, chariot teams turned street gangs, factions furious over imperial taxes and theological favoritism. But to you, it was something deeper. A reminder of how quickly light can vanish, how easily the walls of churches and homes alike can become tinder. One fringe tale says the riots were predicted by a monk who carved the word Nika into an oil lamp and buried it under the hippodrome floor. Supposedly, whoever finds it will inherit Constantinople's fate. You've heard that story since childhood. Now it haunts you. You begin to wonder if one of your own lamps will outlive the city. You try to resume work. You salvage what clay you can. The guild offers emergency supplies, molds, fuel timber, but they come at a price. You owe favors now, promises you're not sure you can keep. Your apprentices look at you differently, not just as a master, but as someone who got them through the fire. You feel responsible for their futures in a way that burns deeper than flame. One night you catch one apprentice, Marin, trying to copy your signature mold design. You don't punish him. You sit him down, ask him what he's afraid of. He tells you that my lamps will never matter. You don't have an answer. Instead, you hand him your oldest tool, a wooden scraper, its handle grooved by years of thumb pressure, and say, then start with something that does. You're quieter after the riots. The streets rebuild, but the people don't, not really. Trust takes longer to fire than clay. Still, orders trickle in. People need light. For altars, for shops, for graves. Especially for graves. You make a batch of mourning lamps, unpainted, shaped like teardrops. They burn clean and soft like breath. You stamp them with a new mark, a simple flame within a broken circle. People notice. They say it feels honest. Your reputation grows. Even bishops begin to call for your work again, especially those who survived the burning of their basilicas. You create lamps for reconstructed naves, for monks who now sleep closer to the floor, and for brides who insist on being married with new flame. One of your pieces, a lamp shaped like a weeping angel, is stolen from a chapel and later found buried beneath a fig tree on the Asian shore. The thief claimed it whispered his sins aloud in the dark. He turned himself in just to make it stop. You take it as a compliment. There's another fringe belief, perhaps your favorite, that the best lamp makers leave part of their soul in the clay. Not metaphorically, literally. That's why some lamps burn unevenly or flicker like a heartbeat, or seem to resist being extinguished. You've started watching your own flames more carefully now. Some of them feel alive, and maybe they are, because when Constantinople went dark, you didn't just survive. You stayed. You shaped the light that came after. You meet her while trading oil, not candle oil, lamp oil. Pressed thick from green olives, filtered through cheesecloth, stored in a clay amphora you baked yourself. You've walked all morning from your workshop to the lower market near the Blacherny quarter, where the baker's daughter, is measuring out loaves with fingers dusted in flour. She notices you before you speak. "That oil for sale?" she asks, nodding at your cart. You nod back. She lifts the stopper, sniffs the golden liquid, and raises one eyebrow. "Good blend. For lighting or frying. Both you say, though you hope she uses it for the first." Her name is Lysandra. She's witty in that disarming way that makes you say too much. Her laugh is sharp, but warm like metal cooling in water. You trade a small flask for a loaf, then return the next day ostensibly to sell more oil, but really just to see if she's still there. She is. You bring her a lamp next time. A small one. Nothing fancy. Just a smooth shell-shaped design that fits in the palm. She lights it behind the bread counter. "Now this makes a good hearth," she says, nodding toward the faint flame that glows beneath her chin like a blessing. Eventually your cart of oil turns into a basket of dates, then into dinner, then into something quieter, more durable. Marriage in Constantinople isn't always about romance. It's about trade, dowry, alliance, location. Her dowry is modest, a corner plot near your workshop, 3 good pans, and most prized of all, a sourdough starter her family has kept alive since before the iconoclast controversy. She says this with pride. You don't know whether to be impressed or concerned. You move into the new house together, small, sun-warmed and echoing with soft bread scents and drying clay. Her presence shifts the air. You begin shaping lamps with more domestic elegance, rounded edges, gentle handles, designs meant not for shrines, but for kitchens, for cradles, for quiet nighttime prayers. She adds lavender to the oil. You pretend not to notice, but you do. The smell lingers in the walls, in the folds of your robe, in the way the flame curls softer now. One day while you're trimming a wick, she mentions children, casually, like asking for more flour. You nearly snip your finger in surprise. But in time, yes. You have children. 2 first, a girl, then a boy. Both loud, both curious, both convinced that lamp maker is a magical profession. They grow up half covered in dust, trailing soot into the kitchen, sticking their fingers into wet clay, hiding unfinished lamps in the breadbasket. Lysandra yells, you laugh, they scatter. You make each of them a lamp at birth. Your daughter's is shaped like a lily. It burns warm and soft, perfect for stories. Your son's is like a lion, awkward, bold, and slightly crooked, but it roars with light. One night your daughter asks you, Papa, where do flames go when they stop burning? You blink, and you tell her the truth. No one knows. Maybe they go to tell stories to other flames. She nods, serious. Then I want my flame to have good stories to tell. You remember that moment forever, because it's the first time you realize you're no longer just shaping clay. You're shaping memory, emotion, Legacy. You begin teaching again formally this time. Not just apprentices, but neighbors, relatives, children of the guildless. You create a side room in your house wallet with drying racks and name it the Glowery. You make the word up. No one argues. Soon you're known not just as a lamp maker, but as a lamp thinker. A craftsman who talks to his work, who mutters over wicks like a monk in prayer, who can identify the best glaze by sniffing its smoke. Historians still argue whether domestic lamp-making traditions were passed through official guild lines or maintained privately through family. You've decided to do both. You still answer to the guild, of course, but your real loyalty now lies with the generations ahead. Your children grow, they learn. Your daughter prefers drawing to shaping. She sketches lamp designs in the margins of gospel books, adding curls, flowers, even little mythological creatures that would scandalize any bishop. Your son wants to explore the city. He runs errands for the oil traders, lingers too long at the docks. Once comes home with a wax seal from a Syrian merchant, and stories of lamps shaped like falcons. You don't stop them, because you know their lamps will be nothing like yours. And that's exactly how it should be. But not everyone approves. One of your old guild rivals, Demetrios the glass lamp fanatic, visits your shop unannounced. He eyes your shelves, your apprentices, your lavender-scented stock and says, "You've gone soft." You smile. "I've gone luminous." He rolls his eyes, but you notice he buys a lamp before he leaves. A small one, lily-shaped. There's a fringe belief among older artisans that any lamp made with joy will flicker differently, its flame dancing more, casting softer, more hopeful shadows. You start watching your students work more carefully. Some do flicker, some burn straight, but all of them feel awake. Even the clumsy ones. You stop striving for perfection. Instead, you begin to cherish the tiny flaws, the fingerprint, near a spout, the uneven glaze that shimmers gold only when the light bends just right. You begin marking these as your own style. Customers start requesting imperfect lamps. You've started something, accidentally. Your home is no longer just a workshop. It's a sanctuary of soft light, of burned thumbs and breadcrumbs, of sleepy prayers whispered over cooling kilns. And in the middle of it all, always is Lysandra. She keeps the oil flowing, the children fed, the dough rising. And every night without fail, she lights your first lamp, the one shaped like a shell, and places it by the window. Not for protection, not for habit, but because some flames deserve to be seen. The first time you step into the Brotherhood Hall as a full guild representative, you forget to bow. It's not nerves. It's the sheer weight of the room. 12 high benches curve around a sunken platform where lamps of every era flicker. Some are centuries old, blackened, chipped, still burning. Others are new, impossibly delicate glass bowls that you suspect were smuggled from Alexandria. The air smells of warm oil parchment and long-held secrets. A clerk clears his throat behind you. You bow. The matter on the table today, trade secrets and broken molds. Apparently, one of the glass blowers in the harbor district has been replicating terracotta designs, and worse, selling them to merchants bound for Antioch. The Brotherhood is in a huff. One elder slams his staff against the tiles. "This is treason," he declares. "Terracotta must stay sacred." You want to roll your eyes. Instead, you speak carefully. If our work can be copied, perhaps it means we've stopped making it hard to copy. Silence. Someone coughs. Another says, "So you think the solution is innovation?" You nod. You return home that night exhausted but weirdly alive. Because for once, you weren't just shaping lamps, you were shaping rules. That week you work like a man possessed. You sketch designs that blur the line between icon and function. A lamp whose flame casts a cross shadow at dusk. Another shaped like an open gospel so the light dances across scripture. You start experimenting with micro-carving tiny ridges that redirect airflow around the wick to reduce flicker. You burn through entire amphorae of oil. Lysandra stops you at one point, pressing a warm cloth to your soot-covered neck. "You're still chasing that first flame," she says. You nod. Because it's true. That first lopsided lamp you made as a boy. You still dream about it. Not because it was good, but because it meant something. It was hope shaped in clay. You're determined to shape that again. The guild soon takes notice. You're offered a title, Keeper of Molds. It's an honorary role, but one heavy with meaning. You're now entrusted with the design archive, a sealed room in the guild's basement lined with hundreds of wooden crates. Each crate holds a mold. Some are recent, others ancient. One, according to lore, was used by a lamp maker who lit the tomb of Constantine himself. Historians still argue whether Constantine's burial chamber ever required oil lamps. Some suggest it was lit by natural skylight. But you've seen that mold. It's shaped like a laurel crown, and its edges are worn smooth from use. You hold it like it's a newborn. There's a fringe belief that these molds hum when touched. You laugh at first until one night, working late, you swear you hear one click. Just once, like stone adjusting in sleep. As keeper, you're expected to teach the younger craftsmen. You gather them by candlelight, unroll scrolls of old sketches, and tell stories of the plague lamps, of the ones made with crushed gemstone dust, of the batch ordered by a general who insisted every spout resemble a dragon's mouth. They listen, they sketch, and slowly they begin to shape like you once did, clumsily at first, then with growing grace. You're proud, but also wary, because one of them, Petros, tall and quiet, asks questions that dig a little too deep. "Why don't we mix glass and clay?" he says. "Why don't we make lamps that float? Why must the oil always go inside?" You don't stop him, but you warn him. The flame honors tradition, you say. Change too fast and it flickers out. But even as you say it, you're not so sure. Because you've started to wonder too. You begin keeping a second sketchbook. A private one. Hidden beneath the floorboards of your workroom. In it, you draw wild ideas, flame-powered pulleys, spoutless lamps, even a system of mirrors to amplify one flame into 5. You never show anyone, but you dream of them nightly. Your work gains attention beyond the city now. Merchants from the western provinces request your designs. A bishop from Thessalonica offers you a commission to create a lamp trail, dozens of coordinated lights, shaped like the apostles meant to guide pilgrims through a mountain pass. You accept. It nearly kills you. The clay freezes in transport. The molds warp in the mountain air. One apprentice breaks his ankle, and another gets lost for 2 days. But when the lights are lit, finally, pilgrims weep. The flames stretch from valley floor to mountaintop like stars fallen to earth. You get a letter afterward, handwritten, from a woman who walked the path with her blind son. She writes, "He couldn't see the flames, but he felt their warmth on his cheeks. He said it felt like angels passing." You keep that letter, folded, in your pocket, always. Meanwhile, the guild is shifting. Younger voices rise. The glassblowers push for fusion work. Some call for a merger. Others demand a vote. You remain neutral, but you can't help watching closely. Because something is coming, something new. You can smell it in the oil, feel it in the clay, a soft pressure, like the moment before a lamp's first flame. And for the first time in years, you're not sure if you'll be the one to light it. You start to notice the arguments first in whispers, then in walls. Someone paints a crude fish over the entrance of a glassblower's workshop. It's meant as a blessing, sure, but drawn in red, it signals division. Then someone else retaliates by scrawling a cracked oil lamp in black ash over a merchant stall. Terracotta's dying, they say. It's the age of glass now. You feel it too. More and more of your customers are asking for clearer light. Something modern, they say, their eyes darting toward the harbor where Syrian imports arrive wrapped in silk and smugness. Their lamps are crystalline, blown thin as dragonfly wings. Beautiful, yes, but hollow. You hold one up one evening just to study it. It's perfect, flawless, cold. You gently set it back down. Too clean, you murmur. Lysandra walks past and mutters like bread with no crust. You laugh, but the pit in your stomach stays. Your apprentices start asking harder questions. Master, they say, what if glass is just better? You want to scold them, but you don't. Because you've wondered the same late at night, watching your clay pieces crack in the kiln while the imported glass glows like captured starlight. And yet there's something about clay, the way it holds heat, the way it smells after firing, the way every lamp carries the memory of your fingerprints like a message in the dark. Still, the tension rises. One day, a minor scuffle breaks out in the Brotherhood Hall. A glassblower accuses a terracotta maker of sabotage. Someone's molds were stolen. Another's shipment accidentally shattered. Voices rise. Hands clench. And you sitting in the middle feel old for the first time in your life. Historians still argue whether the Lamprights Guild ever split in earnest. Some claim it fractured entirely by the 10th century. Others argue it quietly absorbed glassworkers through compromise. You know only this, you saw it coming. You begin teaching your children not just to shape clay, but to shape silence, to listen, to blend. Your daughter, now grown, crafts a hybrid lamp, clay base, glass top, a wick suspended like a tiny bridge between worlds. It's lovely, fragile, and you hate how much you admire it. She names it Phos Irenes, light of peace. It sells out. You pretend to be annoyed, but secretly you keep one for your personal altar. You light it at dawn and watch the flames stretch upward, reflected in the glass like a silent hymn. Meanwhile, you return to your oldest molds. You take them down, dust them with linen, and place them gently on your wheel. These were the shapes of your youth shells, fish, little lion mouths. You whisper to them like old friends. But something odd happens. They feel heavier now, not in weight but in memory. You shape one lamp in silence. No new designs, no flourishes, just the basics. Oil chamber wicks spout a modest handle. When you fire it, it comes out crooked. You try again, still crooked. You stop bewildered. Is it your hand, your age, or has the mold forgotten you? Lysandra catches you frowning at it one afternoon. She presses a fig into your palm. Maybe you're not the same person you were when you made it, she says. Why would your hands be? You nod. You try a new mold. This time the lamp is simple but different. A flatter base, a wider mouth. It's not elegant, not precise, but it burns beautifully slow and steady like a lullaby. You keep that one too. You don't name it, just light it. Then there's the boy. He's not your apprentice, not even from your neighborhood. He just shows up one morning barefoot, holding a chunk of unshaped clay. He says, I heard you're the one who teaches flames to sit still. You chuckle, but you take him in. He's clever, quiet, terrible at shaping at first, but observant. One night you catch him watching a flame through a lens shard, noting how it dances in patterns. He's inventing something. You don't ask what. because you already know you are the past now, and that's okay. There's a fringe belief told only in whispers among the eldest masters that once a lamp maker's hands forget the feeling of clay, they're close to death. Not because the skill is lost, but because the soul has finally learned to rest. You don't believe it, but sometimes at night when your joints ache and your breath stutters, you wonder. Your home is filled with lamps now, some dusty, some bright. Each tells a story. Your son's lion lamp sits by the bread bin. Your daughter's hybrid hums softly in the hallway. The very first shell lamp, now chipped and soot-marked, still glows gently on the sill, as if to say, I'm not done. Neither are you. Because even though the guild feuds and the glass glows brighter, and your hands no longer move like they used to, you still have one more flame to shape. And this one might just be your most important yet. They send a letter with gold edging. At first you think it's a joke. Who seals a message with beeswax pressed into the shape of a double-headed eagle, unless they've made a mistake in addresses. But it's real. A commission from the Augusta herself, the Empress. Not for the court, not for a public altar, but for her private chapel. 7 lamps, each one to burn with grace, gravity, and eternal peace. You read the parchment 5 times, hand trembling slightly. Lysandra raises an eyebrow. They finally notice the old man down by the fish market. You try to laugh, but your mouth is too dry. You meet the chamberlain 3 days later. He's stiff as a kiln paddle and smells like myrrh and folded linen. He speaks slowly, as though dictating to a wall. Her Majesty's chapel is reserved for only her most personal meditations. The lamps will burn perpetually. They must not drip. They must not flicker. They must not fail. You nod, suppressing the instinct to ask if she drips or flickers. This is your most important commission, and probably your last. You lock the door to your workshop for 7 days. Not out of secrecy, out of reverence, because these lamps aren't just meant to be seen. They're meant to stand in the presence of whispered prayers no outsider will ever hear. You start with the clay. You mix 3 different sources, one from Nicaea for strength, one from Thrace for texture, and one from a stream bed only your daughter knows how to find. You knead it like bread hum as you work. You feel every grain like a pulse. Each lamp takes a different form, one shaped like an almond for wisdom, one shaped like a fig for fertility, one shaped like an eye for vigilance, one shaped like a bell for ritual, one shaped like a drop of oil, one shaped like a flame itself, spout curled like a tongue. And the last, it's a simple flat disc with no adornments. That 7th lamp feels the most sacred, because you don't impose on it. You just let it be. When you fire the set, you stay awake the entire night, pacing. The kiln breathes like a slumbering lion. You watch the sky darken, lighten, then darken again. When the flames die, you wait for the hush of cooling. Then you open the kiln, no cracks, not even a warp. The glazes shimmer soft and subdued with undertones of blue and bronze. You don't speak. You simply sit down on the floor and cry for the first time in 20 years, because your hands still remember. Lysandra finds you the next morning asleep beside the kiln. She doesn't say anything, just sets down a warm fig roll and covers your shoulders with a shawl. Delivery is formal, silent. The lamps are packed in sheepskin and cedar. You and your son carry the box into the palace, under escort past pillars taller than ships, past guards with polished breastplates that reflect your own age back at you. You never meet the Empress. You never even see the chapel. But when the door closes behind the guards, you whisper a single thing toward it. Burn well. For weeks you hear nothing. Then one morning a single white lily is delivered to your doorstep. No note. No ribbon. Just a lily fresh, heavy with dew. You place it in a clay cup, next to your very first lamp. That night you light a new wick, just to watch the flame. It dances the same way it did decades ago. Still alive, still curious, still willing to burn. There's a fringe tale one you used to scoff at as a boy that says a lamp maker who crafts a perfect flame earns a single miracle, not of power, but of presence. That somewhere, somehow, their light will be found by someone who needs it most. You don't believe it, except sometimes late at night you wonder. You wonder if one of your 7 chapel lamps might outlast the city. If centuries from now, a worker in ruins might find it buried in dust, brush it off, and marvel at the simplicity of its shape. And maybe, just maybe, light it again. No name on it. Just form, function, fire. Your fire. Historians will argue one day whether these lamps still exist. Whether they were looted during a siege, repurposed in a monastery, melted down for pigment. But you know they were real, because you made them. And for once, no signature is necessary. Your work spoke louder than any name ever could, and in that silence, in that flickering hush, you hear the most sacred sound of all, peace. You can feel the change creeping in like winter fog. Not in the streets, those are as loud as ever, with merchants shouting and cats darting between sandals, but in your bones, in the way your fingers tremble ever so slightly when holding a mold, in the way your knees no longer bend without complaint. You're not old, not yet. But you've entered the hallway before the room, and your grandchildren don't notice. They burst into your shop like they own it, 2 of them giggling, breathless eyes wide with questions. The older one, Myros, has your nose and none of your patience. The younger Eleni watches everything without saying much, like she's already carving stories in her head. They ask for clay. You give them water. They ask for fire. You give them caution. They ask for stories. You give them truth. You're not just shaping pots, you tell them. You're building shadows. They don't understand yet. But someday they will. Your children are grown now, of course. Your daughter runs her own stall, half lamp shop, half gallery. She sells pieces that resemble birds, stars, even music. You don't know how she pulls that last one off, but buyers seem convinced. Your son, he ships lamp kits across the Bosphorus and dreams of expansion northeast, maybe even west. He's spoken the word Rome with hope in his voice. But the grandchildren, they are still malleable, still warm, like clay waiting for a wheel. You try to teach them what you can, but it's different now. Their attention flickers. Myros is already tinkering with a strange contraption that spins wicks without touch. Eleni carves faces into everything, happy, sad, confused. Even her teacups have personalities. They're brilliant and frustrating and impossible, and you adore them. But deep down you worry, because they don't need lamp making the way you did. They won't survive by it. Not anymore. The city has changed. Oil is cheaper, yes, but so is light. Candles flood the market. Glassware from Syria dominates the high-end stalls. And then there are whispers, strange ones, about flameless lamps powered by metal and motion. You don't understand them. You're not sure you want to. One afternoon you catch Myros dismantling one of your old lamps. Not for malice, just curiosity. Why does it need to burn, he asks. You take a deep breath. Then you show him. You light it. No words. Just the steady flicker, the warmth, the way it dances on the wall. You point to the shadow. How it bends, how it breathes. He doesn't say anything, but he watches. And that's enough. For now, there's a fringe belief, one you heard long ago from a traveling monk, that the world will end not in fire or flood, but in light. That one day everything will be so illuminated that shadows vanish, and with them mystery. You didn't believe it then. Now you're not sure, because something is vanishing. Not just the tools or the techniques, but the reverence, the quiet. People want bright, instant, clean. They forget that true light flickers, that it requires tending, that it feels alive. You stop teaching new apprentices. Not out of bitterness, just clarity. The guild is younger now, faster. Meetings feel like debates between parchment and papyrus, both noble, both slightly absurd. You attend when you must. You speak when invited. But mostly you listen. And when you return home, you light your workshop again. Not for work, not even for ritual, just for the glow. Sometimes Lysandra sits with you, bread in one hand, fig in the other. You watch the flames together. They've seen your whole life. They've burned through riots, weddings, births, funerals, and that one time your son accidentally knocked a burning lamp into the stew. You still tease him about it. He still pretends to be mortified. You keep a shelf now, not for sale, not for show, just a shelf of your favorite failures. A warped lion head, a spoutless bowl, one lamp that looks undeniably like a sleeping chicken. You love them, not in spite of their flaws, but because of them. They remind you that perfection was never the goal. Illumination was. One day, your granddaughter slips a small note under your tools. It's a drawing, a lamp, with eyes and a smile. Beneath it, she's written, "I made this." It's silly, but it feels like home. You stare at it for a long time. Then you tack it to your wall, right next to the original mold for your shell-shaped lamp. Historians might never record your name. Scholars might misattribute your works. Guild records may fade, and the brotherhood might one day vanish entirely. But none of that matters, because your light lives in fingerprints, in burnt edges, in stories whispered by fire, and in the tiny, unsteady hands of a child who still believes that lamps have souls. You believe it too. You know it's coming. Not death, though that too has begun to walk closer in the corners of your day, but the last lamp. You've made thousands by now. For altars, for kitchens, for tombs, for emperors and fishmongers, monks and midwives. Some of your lamps have been stolen, shattered, offered, buried, traded, copied. A few, you're told, still burn in corners of old chapels too dusty for anyone to notice. A few more sit in palaces you'll never enter. But now, it's time to make one for yourself. Not a showpiece, not a gift. Just the last vessel shaped by these hands, poured from the clay of a lifetime, pressed with all the years between your first crooked shell lamp and your daughter's strange glass hybrids. You don't make a speech. You don't light incense. You just sit, alone in the workshop, with the wheel, with the kiln quietly breathing behind you, with a small bowl of wet clay that trembles slightly in the morning chill. Your fingers hesitate, not from doubt, from respect. You center the clay. Your body aches, but the rhythm is still there. Press, pull, breathe. The shape emerges slowly. A flat bowl, wide-mouthed, no decorations, no saints, no lions, no patterns, just simplicity. A lamp that asks for nothing but to be useful. When it's formed, you nod and say enough. Firing it takes longer. You watch the kiln like a sentry. You hum to it like your father once did. You murmur prayers, not liturgical ones, but personal. Things only you and the clay understand. When the lamp cools, you do not inspect it. You accept it, and that's the difference now. Lysandra enters quietly. She doesn't ask what you're doing. She simply sits beside you, lays a folded cloth across your lap, and places a small pitcher of oil at your feet. "Olive," she says, "the good kind." You chuckle, then you fill the lamp. You trim the wick, you light it, and you watch. It burns gently, steady. The flame rises as though it knows it is part of something final, and yet it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels exactly enough. You place the lamp on your personal shelf. Not high, not hidden, just where the sun hits at dusk. You don't mark it. You don't tell the grandchildren. They'll find it someday, maybe years from now, maybe centuries. And when they do, they'll ask the same questions you once asked. Who made this? Why does it burn so calmly? How can something this quiet say so much? Historians still argue over the legacy of lamp making in Byzantium. Some say it was a minor craft. Others claim it was essential spiritually, economically, ritually. But no scholar will ever know the feeling of that last lamp between your palms. The warmth it gives, the silence it shares. There's a fringe tale you heard long ago told by a desert pilgrim who claimed to have visited the tomb of a prophet. Inside, he said, was a lamp, no wick, no oil, and yet it glowed. Some say it was a trick, others a relic. You think maybe it was someone's last lamp, and maybe that's enough. Your apprentices come by the next day. They bring honeyed bread, some half-finished projects, and 100 questions. You answer half. You leave the rest for them to figure out, because that's the real legacy. Not the flames you tend, but the ones you trust others to tend after you. That evening, you walk the Maza one last time. The city smells like ash and bread and salt water. You see a boy lighting a lamp shaped like a turtle, one of yours long ago. He doesn't know you, but the flame does, and it burns. You return home, tuck your tools into a linen wrap, and place them beside the kiln. You light your shelf lamp once more. Then you sit with Lysandra. You say nothing, and for once neither does the flame. It's quiet now in a way the city never is. You wake before the sun, not from duty, but from habit. The birds haven't started yet. Even the wind still seems unsure of itself, but your bones know today will be slow. You rise, stretch, and light the kitchen lamp with practiced ease. The room warms instantly, not just in temperature, but in memory. This is the same lamp that lit your children's faces as they giggled over spilled pomegranate seeds. The same lamp that caught Lysandra's hair in that glow that made you forget your own name for a moment. The same lamp that stayed burning when the riots came too close. It's odd how something so simple becomes a witness. Your steps creak a little more than before. Your hands, once precise, now hesitate. You don't shape clay anymore. Not because you can't, but because you no longer feel the need to. You've made your mark in soot, in fire, in memory, but the world keeps moving. Your son's trade business has grown. He now commissions lamps by the dozen from others. Efficiency, he says. He's not wrong, but you still grumble under your breath when one of them arrives with a badly trimmed wick or a base that lists to one side. Your daughter teaches now too, but not in a workshop, in a hall, with scrolls and diagrams. The theory of flame, she calls it. You tried to attend one of her lectures once. She used the phrase thermal propagation coefficient. You lasted 4 minutes. You're proud, of course, but the world she describes no longer feels like the one you built lamps for. And yet, people still come. One man arrives carrying a lamp you made nearly 40 years ago. The glaze has faded. The handle is chipped. But the flame dances just the same. He says, "My father gave this to me on the night he died. He said, keep it lit and remember." You say nothing. You simply place a hand over his and nod. Another visitor brings a child. The girl stares wide-eyed at the rows of lamps on your shelf. She asks, do they all have names? You smile. Only the ones that learn to burn without fear. She laughs bright, wild, full of questions. Just like Eleni, just like you once. You show her how to roll a wick between her fingers, how to pour oil without spilling, how to listen to the silence before lighting. She nods like a student, but grins like an artist. Maybe she'll be one. There's a fringe belief shared among coastal fishermen that souls, when they leave the body, ride the light of the last flame they saw. Not toward judgment, but toward memory. That if the flame was calm, so would the journey be. You've always liked that one, so you prepare, not in a morbid way, but in a quiet, thoughtful way. You clean your shelves. You dust the old molds. You wrap your first carving tool in cloth and leave it beside your workbench. You write down a few thoughts, not instructions, just reflections, and tuck them into your daughter's glaze box. You light the lamps one by one, walking slowly through the house. Not because it's dark, but because you want them to know you remember. Each one has a story. The lion lamp from your son's childhood sits on the kitchen sill. The shell lamp from your first apprentice rests near the door. The 7 chapel lamps, well, you never saw them again. But you know they burn somewhere. You sit outside that evening, a bowl of olives in your lap, Lysandra's shawl across your shoulders. She's gone now 3 winters ago, but her light isn't. It lives in every soft flame, in every lavender-scented draft. In every moment you still pause to say her name, even if just in thought. Your granddaughter brings you tea. You drink it slowly. Then, when the stars rise, you light your final lamp. Not the final lamp, just the one that marks the close of the day. Its flame is small, quiet, but steady. You smile and sleep. Not because you're tired, but because you've finally finished the story and left behind enough light for others to read it. Your hands aren't what they used to be. You used to joke that your fingers could trim a wick in the dark, find the air hole on a cooled lamp, blindfolded stir, slip by instinct alone. Now you fumble with lids, you spill oil, you sigh more often than you used to. But you still rise each morning, you still light the lamps. Even when the light outside seems brighter than it used to, sharper, faster, less patient. The neighborhood's changed. The new tenants in the tile maker's house next door installed wall sconces from the east, shiny metal contraptions they claim never need trimming. The blacksmith across the square switched entirely to candles. Cheaper, he says, and they don't judge me if I forget to bless them. No one really needs lamps anymore, but they still want them. You keep a small table near your front window now. Just 5 or 6 finished lamps, nothing more. People wander in sometimes just to browse, sometimes to talk. You don't advertise. There's no sign. But the scent of oil and clay still floats on the street like a whisper. One day, a young woman enters, eyes full of dust and wonder. She holds out a drawing, one of your earliest models. My grandmother had this, she says. Do you still make them? You smile. Not the same, but I remember how. You guide her through the steps. Let her touch the clay, feel its resistance, its hunger. She laughs when the wheel spits mud onto her dress. It's alive, she says. You nod. Yes, it always was. A few days later, a traveling scribe stops in. He wants a lamp shaped like a scroll, he says. Something that casts light in a narrow cone, perfect for reading late. You sketch a prototype. He grins. No one else took me seriously. You say nothing, but you make the lamp. Even now people surprise you. Even now your craft finds new voices. Your son visits less frequently. He's busy always talking about expansion logistics, something about North Africa now. You don't blame him. His ambitions are large, the kind that need more than terracotta and wick. But sometimes you wish he'd sit a while longer, let the silence teach again. Your daughter comes more often. She brings fresh oil paints and occasionally her own apprentices. "This is my father," she tells them. "He doesn't teach anymore. He remembers instead." It's meant kindly. You smile. But the words sting just a little, because you do teach, in your own way, not through lectures or scrolls, but in how you light a lamp, how you pause before trimming a wick, how you listen to the flame as if it speaks back. There's a fringe tale you whisper now to visitors. You tell it softly, like a bedtime story, that once you begin, a lamp maker grew so old, his hands forgot how to mold. But every time he touched clay, it warmed. Every time he lit a wick, the flame bent forward as if listening. They always ask, "Was it you?" You always say, "Not yet," but you're getting closer. You find yourself talking to the lamps more now. Not out loud, well, not always, but inside. You ask them how they're holding up, whether the drafts in the hallway are too much, whether they remember their first spark. It sounds silly, but it comforts you, because each one carries part of you, not in a mystical sense, in a practical one. Every groove, every curve, every tiny imperfection that only you know about, that's memory. That's legacy. That's you still warm, still flickering, one evening as the sky shifts to that soft pink you've always loved. Your granddaughter finds you sitting with a lamp in your lap. One of hers. Early work, wobbly base, glaze too thick, but she made it, and you kept it. She asks why. You tell her because it tried. She nods, then leans her head against your shoulder and says, "I want to make a lamp that listens." You smile, then start you whisper by letting it hear you first. That night you light every lamp in the house, not because you need to, because they deserve to burn again. Each flame rises like a note in a familiar song, each glow a memory, each flicker a heartbeat. You sit in the center of it all, surrounded by firelight, and think this is what peace feels like. Not silence, not stillness, but presence. The slow, sacred act of knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. You wake one morning to find a lamp has gone out. Not a broken wick, not a draft, just stillness. It's the lion-shaped one, your son's first. The one you kept on the sill beside the kitchen since he was 5. You clean it carefully, refill the oil trim, the wick, with the same tenderness you once reserved for his curls. It lights again, but the flame dances differently now, slower, like it remembers something you don't. You watch it for a long time. Then you start preparing, not for death, though the word no longer frightens you, but for the kind of fading that happens quietly. The kind no physician diagnoses. The kind you feel in the spaces between tasks. When you forget where you left your trimming shears. When you call Eleni by her mother's name. When you try to lift a clay bag and sit back down instead. You begin passing things down. Your daughter receives the glaze bowls, some chipped, some flawless. She laughs when she sees the one with a painted fig leaf on the side. "You still think figs are sacred?" she asks. You reply, "Only when you eat them warm." Your son receives your books, ledgers full of designs, old commission lists, wax-stained sketches with comments like, "Spout too shallow and try cedar ash, not pine." He skims the pages slowly, his fingertips tracing your ink, as if he could feel your younger self in every line. Eleni gets your first mold, the shell. You tell her it's flawed. She says, "So am I." You smile. Then you're ready. She holds it like a relic. Myros doesn't ask for anything. So you leave him a note. You fold it small, press it between the folds of a half-finished wick roll, and leave it in his satchel. It reads, "You don't have to be a lamp maker. But whatever you build, let it glow." And that's enough. You begin visiting the guild one last time, just to sit in the back, to watch the new generation speak. They argue about oil blends, about taxes, about whether a new harbor trade means importing brass fittings. You don't speak, but they greet you with soft nods, respectful silence. One apprentice bows so deeply, you're afraid he might tip into the furnace. You smile, not because they remember you, but because you know they will remember someone like you. There's a fringe belief now circulating among younger lamprites that somewhere in the vaults of the Lumen Codex lies an unnamed mold. Just a plain form stamped only with the words Ignis Hereditas, the inheritance of flame. No one's ever found it, but you think that's the point. It's not a mold. It's a person. You, or someone like you. You stop shaping new lamps. You stop teaching entirely. You sit more often. Listen longer. Your fingers still twitch sometimes as if remembering work they no longer do. You let them twitch. At dusk you light just one lamp now, always the same one. Your last lamp, the plain one. The one with no decorations, just form and fire. It flickers gently in the corner of your room. Its light stretches across the wall, casting a shape that could be a hand, or a dove, or simply a memory. Sometimes Eleni visits. She brings drawings. Some strange, some beautiful. One shows a lamp shaped like a wave curling mid-splash, designed to flicker in rhythm with sea breezes. You nod. Too clever by half, you say. She beams. You teach her how to fold wick lines for travel, how to test oil by scent, how to tell when clay has stopped listening. These are things no scroll teaches. Only hands, only voice, only time. She asks, when do I know I'm ready? You answer when you stop needing to ask. You know it's your last winter, not because anyone tells you, but because the light has changed. You wake one morning to find your lamp still burning, every single one. Steady, as if they've agreed not yet, and so you rise again. You touch each base with a fingertip. You whisper thanks. You trim the wicks one final time, and when you sit down that night beside your last lamp, you do not speak. You only breathe, and in that breath the flame bends forward, as if bowing, as if saying, well done. The gentle heat of the lamp beside your cot, the way the flame curls like a question, then settles like an answer. Your breath matches it. Slow, measured, almost ritual. The house is quiet. The city muffled under the weight of another dusk. Outside, somewhere beyond your shuttered windows, seagulls argue with the waves. But here, there is only stillness. You lie on your side, hand resting near the edge of the bed, just close enough that your fingers catch the flickering light. You let them glow. You remember your father's hand, steady and worn, guiding yours toward the clay. You remember your mother's voice humming softly as she carved crosses into the drying shelves. You remember your first apprentice so nervous, he dropped 3 lamps before noon and begged forgiveness every time the flame sputtered. You remember Lysandra laughing with oil-stained fingertips, whispering stories into the wick before lighting it so it remembers to stay kind. You remember riots and silence, joy and splinters, burnt bread and birth cries, the soft breath of a newborn in your arms, while a lamp flickered on the floor beside you like a second heart. You remember all of it, and none of it feels heavy. It's not dramatic, this ending. Not painful, not even sad. It's just light, soft and unbothered, warm and ready. One grandchild tiptoes past your door, then doubles back to peek in. She sees the flame, sees your breathing, sees your stillness. She doesn't speak. She just places a small, folded scrap of paper at your bedside. A drawing. A lamp just like yours, but with wings. Above it, written in careful lines, I will keep it lit. She walks away. The flame dances once, then steadies, and then without notice, your breath simply fades. Not all at once, not abruptly, like a wick floating on the last drop of oil, calm, satisfied, glowing, until it doesn't need to glow anymore. And the lamp keeps burning, long after the room falls still, long after the night deepens, long after your name becomes something spoken in gentle reverence, or not at all. Because in every place your light once touched a cracked chapel wall, a bread-scented kitchen, the corner of a child's nightstand, you left a story. One shaped in clay, one told by fire, one remembered by flame. Wind down 300 words, and now we rest. The story is complete, but the glow remains soft, steady, like the kind of light that doesn't demand attention, but simply offers comfort. You've walked alongside someone whose hands shaped not just objects, but moments, whose craft was never about perfection, but presence, whose legacy isn't carved into marble or etched in gold, but burns gently in corners, altars, windowsills, and in memory. Let that light stay with you for a little while longer. Let it hum softly as your own thoughts begin to slow. Imagine the glow of oil lamps lining a quiet street in ancient Constantinople, each one flickering in its own rhythm, telling its own story, and casting shadows that dance like old friends returning to say goodbye. Let the air in your room feel warmer now, not from heat, but from connection, from care, from knowing that even in the most ordinary hands, even in quiet corners and humble crafts, there is a beauty that endures. You're not holding clay or trimming wicks, but you carry something just as sacred, the ability to hold space for quiet, for patience, for memory. So breathe, let go. Let the last flicker of tonight's flame stretch gently into your dreams. And when you wake, let your own light rise again, kind, steady, and just enough.